Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Beverage World. My name is Luciano. I'm your host, and today we will be reviewing a really cool LA Cetto Baja California wine. Really recommend it for you guys out there that have not tried this product. Uh, let's get to it. So, the history of Baja California wine and just sort of Mexican wine in general dates back to almost the colonization. So, when we think about Mexican wine, we rarely think about it being an actual sort of pioneer wine making region that really was introduced to the Americas quite early. So it is important to recognize that in terms of when we think about old world versus new world, there had been a lot of production basically in the Mexican region, specifically in the regions of Querétaro, specifically in regions less known to a lot of us historically. So let's kind of dive into that a little bit. Well, we can talk about that a little bit further, but without further ado, we have this lovely LA Cetto, which comes to us from Baja California. This is a really interesting wine because this is part of the Vinos LA Cetto, which is named after Alberto Cetto, the grandson of Don Angelo Cetto, who introduced this noble varietal, which is made out of Nebbiolo. Nebbiolo is a really traditional Italian noble varietal, which a lot of you may know of, which is quite popular. They make a lot of the big barolos. If you know about the King of Wine and the Wine of Kings, you should automatically associate Nebbiolo with Barolo and the really high-end sort of big guns of the Italian wine world. So now that we got that covered a little bit, I would like to just introduce everybody to a little bit of the note tasting on this wine. So let's give it a little try. Let's give it a little swirl, and let's see what this. Right off the bat, I get some really nice sort of ripe cherries, sort of dark fruit. I get a little notes of like chocolate, sort of hints of vanilla. It's really nice. The way it's sort of opening up. Uh, Usually, Nebbiolos tend to be aged quite a bit, so we're gonna let it kind of sit and get a little bit of oxygen, let it air out, let it sort of open up and breathe a little bit. And in the meanwhile, we'll kind of go a little bit through the sort of tasty notes here. That's really important. It's really important that we really enjoy the sniffing part of the wine tasting. It's possibly one of the most enjoyable parts of the actual experience. During the Enlightenment, it was considered that the nose was sort of the organ of reason, and as you all know, sort of a lot of these pre-Hispanic tribes, groups, civilizations, specifically the Olmecas, Aztecas, they all had basically a really high level of hygiene compared to Europe during that time. So when we think about the nose being this actual organ of reason, we are really talking about a really European-centric understanding of this specific organ. So anyhow, sniffing and smell became such an important part of this idea of acculturation, this idea of sophistication, to understand and to really identify what is a foul odor, whether your armpits stink, you haven't taken a shower or whatever, Let's remember back in the days, people used to piss and shit all over the castles, and it was fine. People didn't find anything wrong with that, Smelling like shit was okay, and unfortunately, for a lot of our Aztec and pre-Hispanic ancestors, they were faced with that sort of, kind of famine and stench when they finally migrated, these Europeans, and they basically, took over Latin America, and you guys know the story. But back to the point of the nose as being the organ of reason, is really important to really understand how this sort of Eurocentrism, this idea of sophistication and the sort of sniffing process became so central to bourgeois culture and bourgeois society. So let's kind of dive into this a little more. By this time, it might have opened up a little more, so we'll kind of dive in and see. Oh, I see it. It's a little bit less intense as it was when I first kind of entered. Sorry, I dropped a little bit there. So I get sort of a more spicy, kind of leatherish sort of notes. Character, of course, the fruit is still there. Kind of ripe, dark. Kind of reminds me of that, like those Doc Martens, like when you buy like new Doc Martens and you kind of smell the inside of it. That's what it kind of reminds me of. I also get that dark cherry that you get during the summer. Let's give it a little. Let's give it a little taste. Wow. Yeah, the taste definitely does not match the nose. I feel like the nose is a little bit more fruit forward. Got kind of a puckering. It's quite dry, but it does have some nice juice, which is quite enticing. This is by far definitely a really great food wine that you can have with like pasta dishes, hearty meat dishes. Specifically sort of Argentinian, a lot of Italian food. Really hearty. Like when we talk about Nebbiolo, we talk about sort of sort of a mountainous region. We talk about animals that grow in this sort of colder, sort of cloudy atmosphere. I think about the top of a mountain where it's like sort of quite cold and whatnot. So I think it's really important to think about these things when choosing the right pairing for your wine. So let's give it another taster. Let's see if maybe we can catch some other sort of notes in here. I love the dryness. There's a really sharp acidity that really comes through on the mid palate. It's really interesting. It almost reminds me of sort of kind of like a bitter black cherry. Sometimes when you bite into a cherry that's not necessarily completely ripe, and you get that sort of bitterness, kind of acidity to it. That's what it reminds me of. So I think it's a really interesting sort of combination of both aromas, which entice you and sort of draw you into this idea of it being a fruity, spicy, leathery wine. But then when you taste it, you get this sort of kind of bitter, puckering, kind of cherry, really spicy, really delicious notes. To be quite honest, you also get a little bit of the salience. Salience is essentially salt. A lot of these Baja California wines are really interesting because you get the sea effect. So a lot of the wines become a little salty. So you get the saltiness coming through. This is really can work really well with some sort of tomato based hearty fish dishes from the region. This could also be an interesting thing to explore. However, I would kind of stick to more sort of mountainous, sort of gamey style of food. That you compare with, preferably with some sort of tomato base that would really accentuate. That will be accentuated by the acidity of the actual wine itself, which is quite nice. Again, this is LA Cetto. This is a private reserve. It's a Nebbiolo. It's a Nebbiolo. It's barrel aged, and this is produced and bottled in the Vinícola LA Cetto. In the state, it's bottled and is bottled in Valle de Guadalupe, Baja California. And this is this is a 2012 vintage, and of course this is imported from Mexico. I purchased this at a really cool store called Astor Wines in the Greenwich Village here in New York City, and I thought it was just really interesting that they actually carry that after visiting different wine stores. People seem to kind of look at me like if I'm crazy, when in reality, some of the best Sauvignon Blancs, some of the best sort of Nebbiolos are coming out of that region. Of course, we cannot by law call a lot of these Nebbiolos that are coming out of that region, Barolos, but in fact they're being produced really similar to Barolos because they are using the aging. They're aging it for 6 years. They're doing time in barrel. They're doing time in bottle. There's the significant age that goes into this specific vintages, specific types of Nebbiolo production. However, by law, similar to champagne, similar to tequila and other spirits, you just cannot call, in this case, an LA Cetto Nebbiolo an actual Barolo. So, with that being said, it is important that we recognize that, in fact, we have really great wines in these regions, and in fact, we have Nebbiolos, which is again, Barolos are considered the king of wine and the wine of kings. Also being produced in that area, so we got a lot of kings producing a really great wine. Let's give it another try, guys. So again, let's see if we can catch a little bit of this sort of aromas. Again, you got this sort of vanilla notes coming through here, and this comes to us from the French barrique that gives off this really nice sort of vanilla character to the actual wine. This is a 13.8, so it's quite balanced. It's ideally a 13.5 would be at its prime, but again, each prime producer is different. Some make hotter wines, hotter meaning is higher in alcohol content, and some of them make a little bit subtler wines. Like a lot of the whites tend to be a little bit on the lower alcohol content side. However, you can find really aged Chardonnays, California Chardonnays, over oak Chardonnays for a lot of people that don't like them as much, or a lot of the stainless steel, which you find in Italian wines, which are delicious, really crisp, more focusing on the actual fruit and the expression of the actual grape, rather than give it a complex sort of character as it is when you add the barrel to it. So let's give it a little sniff. It almost seems like the acidity is starting to kind of balance out a little bit. The fruitiness and the spiciness is not as sort of pronounced in the mid palate anymore. It kind of just coats in the back of the palate, becomes sort of the driver of the actual experience, which is really nice, because when we talk about complexity, when we talk about the way wines continue to develop as the actual air enters the glass, it becomes apparent that in fact it's an ongoing experience. The wine itself is alive, and it continues to transform as the oxygen enters the bottle, as the oxygen enters the glass. Of course, we'll get into more what are the actual correct glasses. Of course, this is the glass that I have. This is just a glass that I found in my pantry, so I decided to use this. But we'll go into that, and if you guys out there want to send me some cool glasses, some good glasses for red or white, I'll be more than welcome to use them, and of course give you a shout out. Also, for all you guys out there that are interested in shooting out any sort of spirit, beer, sort of alcohol that you want reviewed, that you want a sort of historical context behind it, please share it. Please, I'll give you all the information at the bottom of the channel, and we can start basically building a community and sharing a lot of spirits that might be unknown to a lot of people. And it's really important to really get versed in a lot of these spirits. When you go to a bar, it's important to know what's a cordial, what's a base spirit, like how do you serve, how do you basically ask for a drink. It's really cool to know what the type of options that you have. Like that, you can easily just modify a drink and be able to ask your bartender exactly what you want, and more or less you become the sort of builder of your own cocktail, in fact, because you can really specify what kind of spirit, what kind of chase, what kind of cordial, what kind of liqueur you want in your cocktail. So I think that's really important to know, and really important to build a community around people that are truly into the practice of wine drinking. by far one of the oldest and one of the most ancient forms of wine consumption on the planet. So we'll give it another little swig before we sign off, and I also would really like to say that this is my first video, and I decided to do this video because I really think that first of all, Mexican wine and wine in general is becoming a really popular thing amongst young people, and unfortunately there's not that much information out there that is really catered to, you know, the young consumer that really wants to go out to a wine bar, really wants to dive into, but doesn't really know how to go about ordering or what are the articulations necessary, you know, to enjoy a good wine. The swirling, which is really important, you know, we see the color because it has like a beautiful color. It's almost like a sort of like a dark cherry red. The lakes are not as pronounced as some other wines, which of course it could be that it's a 13.8 alcohol. It's not really high alcohol, but it does have some really nice sort of, it's an actual pretty wine. It's a really pretty wine. And again, the smell is really typical of a Nebbiolo. And it's really wonderful. So again, for all you guys out there that don't know, please promote Mexican wine drinking. There's some really delicious wines out there. I will continue to review different types of wines for you guys can have an idea when you guys go and what kind of sort of producers to look for, because it's important to support Mexican wine specifically because, you know, we have so much Italian, French wine, German wines kind of swamping the market, when in fact you don't have to go too far. You know, you can essentially you know, go across the border and get some really delicious wines. The same thing, you know, we got like Brazilian sparkling wine, which is really grabbing the attention of a lot of people. Chinese wine. So we have a lot of really good, interesting things that are coming through now, and I think it's important to really showcase these products and showcase that, you know, we can, as Mexicanos, produce some of the best wine on the planet. And again, my name is Luciano. I'm a food historian. And if you guys have any questions, please leave them on the comments below. Please go out and get yourself a nice, beautiful glass of this Cetto wine if you guys get a chance. And don't forget to subscribe. And if you really want to send me anything in terms of tips, anything that can make this channel stronger, because this channel is for all of you guys. I really want to build this channel organically. So the way it's going to work is essentially I'm going to be reviewing wines and eventually move into different types of spirits like tequila, mezcal, bacanora, a lot of the typical Mexican spirits that we know or we don't know much of, and just kind of present that and, you know, give people a better understanding. At least when you go to a bar, you know, you know a little bit more about mezcal, a little bit more about tequila, a little bit more about Mexican wine, which of course brings a different era of sophistication to your overall experience, and that's the type of value that I want to bring to you. So again, my name is Luciano. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you subscribe and follow me up. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up, and thank you very much. Have a great day, guys. Peace.